I'm not going to do an intro with this gentleman because we'll do a quick kind of rundown with the formal intro for the episode. But
Sure.
Really, happy to have Joel here, and I'm going to start a little unconventionally, I think, and ask you a question, Joel, just right out of the gate. And it's not about your handicap in golf. You told us that was off limits, so we'll stay away from that. What do you think about Deion Sanders?
I think marketing and return on investment, I think it's a win. I think empowering student athletes, it's a win. I think an example of being hyper or uber competitive, it's a win. I think the story is yet to be told, though.
Okay. Do you think it's more surface than it is substance underneath?
Oh, no. I mean, I believe that, probably what's underreported in media is, Deion's faith, right? So I think that's what truly drives him. He has all the experience in the world. What an athlete, what a competitor. So, I love that there's doubters because, he doesn't have a 15-year record of coaching, youth sports and stuff. But, so far, I mean, last year with Jackson State and, this year with the Buffaloes, he's so far so good. I mean, I admire that kind of story. It's not an underdog story, but it's a success story of being competitive, having standards, living by your standards.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if he didn't have doubters, it would, I don't know what he would become, but I think that he feeds off that.
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is that I'm really interested in watching guys that go into a system, a school, a company, a business, and have an impact like that. Right. They get in, there's an immediate effect, however you want to quantify that. And I find that fascinating. Right. I start to look for that, and then I start to kind of deconstruct what that is. And so, Joel, the reason I ask you that is that, I got to experience something similar with you coming into to Torchy's. And, I was really, like I was telling you on the phone the other day, I was really excited to have you on here because there was, when we started talking about guests that we wanted to have on, there's really a short list of people that that I can look at that not only have impacted my life, but I've seen impact others. And so I'll tell you, we're not really publicizing this podcast a lot yet, but it's getting out that we're doing it. And I want to share a text message I got from somebody that knows you, that heard you were coming on here. And they said, what stands out about Joel is his ability to have a business focus and at the same time bring aspects like grace and servitude into leadership. Hard to do without contradiction. And they go on to say that, one time they were talking about a reduction in turnover with new store openings, and you made them quantify the numbers of people you made them quantify the number of people that the percentage represented in that reduction. And it was something like 700 people that were affected. And you said, focus on the people, not the percentage. And so that was, to me, was really interesting. And where does that come from? Like that's.
Well, I think it comes from, in business, especially the hospitality business is a people-heavy business, and traditionally in hospitality, turnover is what you would consider high compared to any other business, and management has a perspective sometime to make it okay or make it about a percentage and so I believe that every percentage is about a number, and every number has a name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every name has a story. And so when we can think of it in those terms, it's a people issue. It's people don't leave great organizations, people don't leave. Very good leaders. People lead things that are chaos, or organizations that don't have their stuff together, right? So that quote was that's what that was about. It's not about, hey, let's compare. Well, we're better. We're only 33%, so we're better than the people down the road that are doing 40%. I mean, it's still 700 names, or whatever it is. It's where that came from.
Yeah.
Have you always focused on the hospitality industry, or have you tucked in and out of different?
Well, my career has been in hospitality. The last part of my career, I went to work for a fitness company for a little bit. So, but that was kind of, a personal decision to have something that was close to me, fitness.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was, I started not far from where we're sitting today in hospitality, at a hotel up here. It was back then, it was called the Austin Hilton Inn, which is a stone's throw from here. And that experience was awesome for me because as a young 19-year-old college student that had to work, I started there, but I had a boss that took an interest in me and didn't treat me like an employee, and nurtured me and challenged me to do other things. So I guess I was blessed with that from the beginning to look at work as empowering.
Yeah. And you can trace your philosophy in terms of leadership back to that moment? Or is there earlier times where you started gradually thinking that people are important?
I've literally lived around the world. Dad is a retired naval officer, so we moved every 2 years. But I got to see leadership in not only in the household, but in what Dad did, and he made sure that we were. I don't know, it sounds corny, but we were in Boy Scouts. And if you want to talk about structure and leadership and everybody pulling their own weight. I think it was from that. And then, I've been blessed with senior pastors in my life that you look at and you go, that's an example of humility and leadership and sticking by standards. So, it's been a good ride, but. Yeah. But mostly hospitality.
Yeah.
I know you've, this is my first time meeting you, so I'm real eager to hear a lot more about you, but, and I know you've had a lot of success, but I'm real curious because and what we're doing in my office, which is an architectural group, we're trying to subtly change the culture. And it is based on leadership, and it is based on this thing that we feel is broken within the architectural community. But at the same time, it's hard to balance that with with a percentage of revenue, in terms of return. Now you could say that, well, we're holding on to people. We have a great culture. People love to work there, but then how do you begin to, evaluate that leadership in terms of revenue base? And it may be a different industry entirely.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to make money if you're in business, and you don't have to be apologetic about that. We're here to make money. Yeah. So I think some people maybe attack that, and they don't just come out and say we need to make money. Yeah. Now, I don't believe that we should step on anybody's back to make money, or cheat or lie or steal to make money. But I think we're here to make money. I think that's part of how you have to, and I believe that the frontline employees all the way up to the C-suite not only need to acknowledge that, and if the entire system understands it, hey, we're here, that's what we're here for, I think you get to that closer. I also think that organizationally, when you talk about culture, I think that you have to start with this concept that I call what we believe. That you have to really get to the bottom of what we believe, not only personally, but organizationally. And when you can have those conversations or exercises about this is what we believe. I've been told what we believe determines how we behave.
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist or anything, but what we believe determines how we behave.
Sure.
So I think it's important that organizations and individuals first answer that question: what do we believe?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a hard question to answer sometimes. I think maybe not a hard question to answer, but yeah, let me back up. I'm coming at this from seeing a lot of incongruity between what people say they believe and what actually gets, what actually happens in the field and how people are actually treated. But is that just the leadership involved, or is it people have a trouble actually articulating what they believe?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's that we are in a I, me, my world right now, and I think that we're in a social media world, and we are in a information age, and have been in an information age, for a long time, where it is easier to have people tell you what you believe than to go through the exercise to understand what you truly believe. But I think it's liberating, and I think that you show me an individual that knows what they believe, and they will be more successful in not only leading their families, but in whatever enterprise, or if it's exercise or anything. And I think that's a culture builder. Mm-hmm. And so, I would start with that and then the second part of that is that, you need the majority of people on the team that believe the same way that you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what makes culture strong and creates, that synergy effect if you're around. So it's really important. And in the hospitality business, you're around a lot of young people. Yeah. The average age in restaurant is probably below 24 years old when you think about that. And when you look at the statistics and the demographics about that age set, they're searching, and they're living in an economy that is vastly different than when you were 23 or 24, or I was 23 or 24. And so, it exacerbates some problems that they have. But I had a tremendous opportunity to speak to lots of them and ask that simple question, and, you start with, you can start with, do you believe the world is round, or is the world flat? You can start with that, but you go through that and, do you believe in education? So let's talk about that. So it's important in building culture.
Yeah. At what point in your life or your career did you establish a belief system that you could hold on to and then lead with? And how did you get there?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, I think that maybe I'm a sum of all the parts, and that it was an evolution. I think I've referenced a pastor or church and Boy Scouts and stuff. So, so I think that, I think I was raised with values, having values. And I think that's the other part of culture is that you have to be values led. You have to believe in something, but you have to have values. And, we always worked on it you have to have character.
Yeah.
That you have to, man, I want people to say that, Joel is a man of character, or my wife or my children are people of character. So I've always tried to lead that way with, that you can trust me at my word. And I learned probably 1988 that I learned this idea that don't make a commitment that you can't keep. Yeah. And so many leaders don't know how to say no.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were just telling a story about someone that told you, it was going to take 3 months to meet with you. And that's from people being able to say no. So if I can't meet you here on this day, or if I can't give you Friday off as an employee, don't tell the employee, well, maybe, or yeah, or we think, because then all of a sudden you lose trust, right? And you have not honored a commitment. And commitments don't have to be this 1 year pledge to donate. That's a big commitment, or I'm going to lose 30 pounds commitment. I mean, a commitment can be, can I have Friday off? That's a commitment, right? Mm-hmm. And so commitments can start small and grow big. But I think you maybe can see the theme that I'm leading with is about, know what you believe, lead with values, have character, honor what you say. And that really helps to build trust.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, that's real interesting, because it's not a sense of where you were educated, what platform you were on, but it's this basic life mission about values and humility, like you were saying earlier. So that's good to know.
Yeah. I've had the good fortune of being with 2 companies to help go through a process where we establish the company's core values, mm-hmm. right? And so I think we've all seen companies with huge mission statements and core value statements. And, I always thought that core values should be, what we believe. Yeah. What the company's mission could accomplish, what it could be, but that they had to be, these weren't just something that you saw in the C-suite, or the board of directors maybe read them once when they had their annual meetings, but that the entire organization embraced these core values, understood the core values, and you taught the core values, and they were important. Yeah. And I think that's once again a culture builder, right? That we do that. And it was so important to me in my last organization that I actually had a cheat sheet that went through the core values, so that I was consistent, so that I didn't waver on what the core values meant or how they are applied. And now I could go through this. I could spend 30 minutes going through it with you, or I could spend 5 minutes going through. But we were consistent on the teaching, the giving out of the core values, so that the message was consistent and spread. Yeah. So that people, once again, had something that they understood, that they believed in.
Yeah. I've got in front of my monitor, I've got a few key words that I want to make sure that we always do with all of our work, as well as our core values. So it is a good reminder, and it is a good kick in the pants whenever you're not following those as well. And when you're not following them, it's also key to have humility and say, look, guys, I fell down on this one. Yeah. Here's how we pick ourselves up, because failure is a key to success. I understand that. And I'm real curious too. Hope you don't mind me asking, but your brain sounds real full of life and an idea of how to lead. Whenever you found success in the various companies that you've been involved with, would you weigh your participation in that success in a realm of how to lead the culture, or is it finance driven, or is it a little bit of both? I don't know if that question makes sense, but I'm real curious, because they're big organizations that you've been a part of. How does one insert themselves with your mindset and then find success?
Well, I found success because I've always adopted this attitude or this principle that this is my ministry, right? Mm-hmm. So my ministry is to lead people, to provide value, help them learn about character, be results driven, and also help the organization make money. And so when I looked at it like that, it's let's get to the frontline employees. That's who we're here to serve. That's where the magic happens. Mm-hmm. That's where the public and the guest interact. That's where your brand is represented, believe it or not, whatever the brand is. It's not, they don't think, of the C-suite. Your brand is manifested by frontline employees. And so how do we impact those frontline employees when, I don't know, you're in the C-suite and you have multi-unit people that are over multi-unit people that are over single unit, and so it has to be, you have to have a process and a goal and objective. But I think you also have to believe that, if I'm not making work better for the frontline employees, if they don't enjoy coming to work and serving the mission, then I failed and we failed.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I approached it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think about, in the service of that, leading upwards, right? When you've got a board of directors or a private equity group behind you that's pushing down these priorities and agendas and their values, right? And you've got to marry that up with a servant leadership attitude of, really focusing on and investing in the frontline people. Because I got to imagine that those come into conflict a lot. How do you lead upwards, and how do you do that?
Well, I think that you have to be true and support the people you lead. That's job one. If you rise up in organizations, you're going to meet the board of directors at one point in time, and whether that's a quarterly meeting or an annual meeting. And my experience has been that board of directors are there to advise, and whether it's a governance board or an advisory board, if it's if it's not a public company, they have a job to do, and their job is really to push, mm-hmm. right, and to point out that there are better results out there. So I think I recognize that. I understand your question. There is conflict, but if you understand what you believe, man, I'm going around this a long way of trying to tell you that I usually don't get along very well with boards, because I'm an operator, right? Yeah. And these are the people that I serve, and they're going to want to know why you can't reduce labor and increase profits, and sell more and save more and stuff like that. And it in my opinion, the board is most of the time the farthest away from the frontline employees and the operation and the execution. And so you try and help them understand this is the reality. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm kind of I know exactly what you're asking.
Well, and I'm working my way through to the question of, why is it seemingly, and again, I haven't been in the industry as long as you have, or seen as much of the industry as long as you have, but I've seen definite examples of what you're talking about being very unique, right? That definitely honoring the frontline employees, investing in them, building that trust in them, and then even framing that inside the partnership program that you've advocated and ushered into a couple different companies, but that's unique, right? And then why is that unique? Is it because of the lack of, and I don't want to say the lack of character, but kind of that's what it is, where you've got that point where the board's pushing down these agendas, these efficiencies, right? Which most people would take and push down to their, team below them, almost commoditizing the people below them. But is it unique because people won't stand up and say, no, we're going to invest in the people, even at the risk of maybe not being as efficient, as profitable, but it's more of a long-term. I know I said a lot of stuff there, but what I'm trying to say? It's definitely unique, and you don't see every organization do it. But when you see the organizations that are doing it, they're typically, there's success and there's results and there's a return on that mindset.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have to go back to, the organization that really helped teach me partnership was Texas Roadhouse. And I would tell you that, they're a publicly traded company. They're killing it, have been killing it for over 20 years. And, their board, I'm sure, is supportive because, the founder of Roadhouse was a contrarian. And, his idea was, let's put more people on the shift. Let's not raise prices. Let's raise top line sales by doing it that way. And so, I'm sure that board is appreciative of doing that.
So why don't more companies do it?
Do partnership or?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an investment, right? It's a talent-driven decision, because when you have a partnership program or a managing partner program, the concept is this job here running this single unit, in my mind, is worth X. With an upside of this. And that X for that job is usually higher than what you would pay for a general manager or somebody else. So number one, it's a financial commitment. Number two, it's a talent-driven decision. It's not easy to have a partnership program because if the job is worth $100,000 a year, you have to find $100,000 a year talent. Yeah. And that's difficult. Yeah. You've got to go through a lot. So that may be the reason for it. The other reason for it is that, those partnership programs are based on that managing partner getting a piece of the action, whether it's net income or percentage of EBITDA or what it is. And sometimes those single units don't produce enough, to compensate the managing partner. So, when you do the math, they don't really work out. But where the opportunity does work out, you're able to attract talent. The other component of those partnership programs that I've been involved with is that talent brings you money. They give you whatever the buy-in is, $10,000 or $15,000. It's not like a franchise. I'm not buying a job, but here I'm proving that I'm one of the select few, and that I'm going to invest my money where my mouth is. Yeah. That's my family's money. I mean, I could spend that $15,000 on a lot of other things rather than have you hold it. So it attracts a special type of talent. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to mention that, I learned a lot working alongside you there at Torchy's, but one of the biggest things that I took away from that, which was a really hard lesson to learn, and it revolved around partnership, was really, having more of an open mind for feedback from the front line, from the operators, from the people that were in the stores. So, our job at Torchy's was to manage design, construction, getting the facilities on the ground so that operations could come in and do their thing. And until Joel came in and that team, the C-suite came in, we kind of owned our own little machine, our own little department there, that we didn't take feedback from anybody. Like we were supposed to be the experts. We were supposed to be the foremost authority on equipment layout, building layout, seating, like all aspects inside that box. And one of the things we were asked to do is open ourselves up for feedback from operations. Yeah. And that was really fucking hard because we're supposed to be the experts. And we had a lot of arrogance and a lot of success behind us, right? It's like, hey, why do we need to? But I tell you, we got into doing it. And I was blown away by how much we didn't know and how much common sense things that we just overlooked that we would have never found out had we not, really had a true partnership with everybody in the company, specifically the guys and girls on the front lines, in the stores, living and breathing there. And then our mentality, my mentality shifted, and I pushed this down through the team, is that, we need to honor these folks. They're living and breathing and living their lives inside these spaces. And so we need to try to really make that the best experience that we can, not only for the company, but for the people, everything, right? And then really it came down to, if we're really going to honor our commitment to being the best in learning, then the only way we can really do that is get real-time information from the field. So anyways, that was a huge thing for us. And I think it definitely changed the game. And then, I mean, that's still part of the way we operate today is, if we've got a superintendent in the field that's building something, we're really focusing on that person, that guy, what's going on? How can we get better? Not just being, I've done this for 20 years, I should know what I'm doing. It's like, no, I need to still talk to the guy on the ground. Yeah. So, yeah.
How have you seen your world in terms of personnel management, leadership, pre-COVID versus post-COVID? There's been a big swing for us in terms of how much difference in terms of balance of life, or how much difference in terms of what do we give and what do we expect to receive. Talk a little bit about that, because we overswung and then we've come back a little bit.
Yeah. I think the concept of quality of life of the people you lead should be, should be important. What COVID did for us was, in retrospect, was make a lot of businesses, I mean, a lot of the world, really have this knee-jerk reaction out of fear, that controlled the narrative that, it's safer to work at home, you're more productive to work at home, let's give you some stimulus because you're working from home. And that really, really, really changed the environment of work.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we've recovered from it yet. I know that there's a lot of organizations, a lot of these tech companies now are saying, we want you back in the office. Yeah. And, I think it's a subtle admission that, perhaps we were wrong in that decision. Now, I know that at Torchy's, we opened 12 restaurants during COVID.
Yeah.
But once again, we understood what we believed and who we were, and we were an operations-driven restaurant company. And by the way, the operators, had no option. They couldn't work from home, Right. And by the way, the world still needed to eat during COVID. Yeah. So the people at H-E-B and the people at Torchy's and the people at McDonald's, had to figure out how are we going to do this? So I don't know if that answers your question. I think that, we're trying to put it back and get it back. I think, all of business is. Yeah. And I think that, I think it's tough out there right now to attract talent.
Yeah.
We're in an inflationary cycle where, if wages aren't perceived to keep up with, what I need for a cost of living, it's doubly hard to attract. And have we conditioned the workforce that, maybe you don't have to work as hard and maybe we're going to subsidize you? That's going to be tough to recover from. Yeah. I mean, we'll have to recover from it, but it may be a long haul.
Yeah.
But I think if you have the culture, like we talked before, I think it's going to be easier to say, people are going to want to come back and, work next to their teammates, right? Because heck, I miss them. And, we're a team and we have a mission, and we're leading with values and with character. So that may be a good benefit of having a super culture, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was what I'm hearing you say is based on the values that you created, and not for the sake of creating them, but people believe them, right? And I know Torchy's world well, and I know that the staff and everybody behind it believes in that culture, and they really bought into it, and they still do, as well as the people coming in and the customers coming in. And so we found that too. People wanted to come back because they enjoyed the company and they enjoyed the collaboration and they enjoyed the realm that we work in. And I think we didn't step in it correctly, or we didn't evaluate the situation properly. And is that we during COVID, we lost sight of the mentorship. And that really was detrimental because we had never experienced turnover. And the reason for some of the turnover that we had during COVID is we forgot the mentorship during the online meeting. Like that was just something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a big learning lesson because we dropped some of those core values that we really believe in. And we dropped some of these things just because we thought that the world was chaotic in a way and we were just putting out fires. And if you go back to those beliefs that you really believe, if you've, even though it's hard and the world is chaotic and you don't quite know what the other side means, if you can really go back to that list on your wall and stay true, then yeah, it seems like that's the right pathway.
We're have a different perspective because we're a little bit older generation now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'll speak for you guys too. We come from a world where a face-to-face interaction is very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's what I want to be able to lead. Being in front of people. Yeah. But we've hyper accelerated that move into being remote and virtual and all that. The fact is that's where we're heading.
Yeah.
So I wonder how leadership's going to change, and can you still find a way to honor the relationships and culture in all aspects in a more virtual world? And it's interesting. We were visiting Shake Shack. This was a couple years ago, and they were moving into a kiosk system, and this was pre-COVID. And I haven't followed up to see if they really pushed that agenda further now at post-COVID. But they were trying to limit the amount of employees and just go kiosk based. Yeah. And I'm like, man, back then I remember thinking that goes way away from the core values of Torchy's and creating an experience and face to face. But even for running a business now, it's changing and it's becoming more difficult.
Yeah, man, we were lonely during COVID. I can tell you that. And the Zoom calls, the technology with Zoom is fantastic. I wouldn't mind if I don't ever have to do another Zoom call.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you that.
That's true.
But if we go back to culture just for a second, I think maybe one of the things that I was remiss in not talking about, and because we've been talking a lot about Torchy's, right, and the success at Torchy's, I think, the guy that founded Torchy's created a phenomenal product. And when you have a product that is easy to believe in, that is fantastic, the job's a lot easier. If the people in your organization don't believe in your product, man, you have an uphill battle, don't you? So we were blessed at Torchy's. I think Mike Ripka, what a phenomenal product that it didn't take a whole lot to get an 18 or 20-year-old, taste the guacamole or the queso, and you're not going to find any better. So that was, that's a shout out to
absolutely
to Ripka, and great product, great, made it easy, didn't
Makes
it?
everybody's job easier.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've mentioned the product now. We've talked about operations. We've got a designer architect in here. We've got a contractor in here. We've got an operator in here. So I think people would want to hear about design and how that impacts the space. And this goes back, I don't know if you remember, Joel, but we were sitting in a conference room and this question got put on the table. And I'd love to hear your interpretation of it. Maybe we can dive into it. But what is the ROI of design on a concept in general? How do you think about that from an operator standpoint?
My most recent job was running 30,000, 40,000 square foot gyms.
Yeah.
Right. Where design was critical, not only the design of the box, but where the equipment fit and work. In the restaurant space, if you ask an operator first, the first thing that they're going to want out of design is, can I operate it?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Is it efficient?
Yeah.
The operators always want a little bit more space and maybe, a larger grill or whatnot. So I think that from the operations point of, it's got to work. It's got to be functional, right? It's what's the functionality of the design part. But I think we also recognize that, we open spaces so that guests can come in, and that they can, the quality is made up of the entire experience, right? So the ambiance, how, did you put enough tonnage on the roof so that it's cooling up?
Yeah.
In Texas, especially, even in the kitchen, by the way, it doesn't hurt to keep those guys, keep those guys cool. And then, is it pleasing to the eye? The marketing guys are going to say, is it on brand? Does it represent the brand? Mm-hmm. Can I go from one unit to the next and understand that I'm, with this brand? So, I think design is critical. It's not as important as the food you're making, obviously, or how you execute that.
Sure.
We'll always have that.
Sure. Right?
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers it. I mean, we're always appreciative of it, but if you're an operator, let's face it, you don't have the skill to design.
Yeah.
You didn't go to architect school, or you're not a construction guy with the ability to, measure twice and saw once. You can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe it doesn't get as much credit from the operations team, as it deserves. They just really appreciate the functionality of it first, right? And so I don't know when the designers start. I've worked with architects to design a restaurant concept before. Matter of fact, almost from the ground up. And do you start with functionality, or do you start with what's the curb appeal?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what drives it? So
we lived in the world of creating an experience, and I want to definitely hear your take, Mark, on it. But that's where the tension came in, especially later in the game with Torchy's of now it was more about scale, getting more open, right? The conversations about, budgets don't tend to go up when you're scaling a company like that. Budgets for design and construction tend to go down. And so it's that you end up at that question of like, well, what is the ROI of spending another $50,000 on light fixtures when arguably you might not need them to sell more tacos, But then again, we're on the other end fighting for we want to stay true to the brand in terms of creating this. We always said that when people walk in, we want to raise their blood pressure a little bit, like get them excited. Mm-hmm. Definitely, hit them with the brand, hit them with the things we want to hit them with. And then the focus then shifts to the food and the experience and all that of the interaction with the guests, right? So then we want them to relax and really enjoy the experience. So how do you do that through design?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, I know it's hard not to be biased from a design standpoint, but how do you think about that?
I agree. I mean, I've had I learned the wrong way, which is focusing on design too early, too swiftly, and only caring about the aesthetic. I did that when I was younger, but now how we approach it is, it doesn't matter if we're doing a restaurant or gym or a house or whatever. If it doesn't function, if it doesn't operate, people are not going to come. The staff is not going to be happy. Your experience is going to be terrible, no matter how beautiful it is. And so I think it is critical. That's the first part. If we're doing a restaurant, if we're talking about restaurant specific, we immediately attack the kitchen, right? We want to know the equipment. We want to know how the daily life functions. And, with working with Torchy's, you guys had already developed that in a well-oiled machine in terms of back of house.
Sure.
And so we could specifically focus on the aesthetic and what the user experience was, and that was a whole lot of fun. But when we're doing ground up, and it wasn't Torchy's, it was a different process. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really how we we try to focus now. If we don't get those nuts and bolts, that basic block and tackle down, then your aesthetics is going to go out of the door, and we understand that. And that's the operations, that's the budget, that's the schedule. Those three things are critical. And how we actually sell our work is, or what we do is, design is subjective. Is red better than black or white or green? Everybody's going to have a different answer. But what we are selling is a service, and we understand that, and we understand it well. And so if our service doesn't give you a way to develop revenue and business and structure within whatever you're doing, then we're falling down. And design, is incredibly important. And the gray area about what is operations and what is design and experience, like there's a real finite, and you could look at that at your cash wrap, right? Where people order tacos, or where they stand in line. Like, that was real critical for us, because I'm a fidgeter. Well, what do people do whenever they just stand there? Well, let's create an experience for them. Well, that's going to cost money. And that's, so there are gray areas that we will battle over, but it's all based, but it never would, maybe you tell me, it would never challenge the operations that the business found success on. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk about experience all day and how wonderful it is and how impactful it is, but it doesn't necessarily need to cost more than anything else, right? There's a way that, that you can create a budget for a project that will allow the thing to pencil, and we need to follow it, and the builder needs to follow it. We need to follow it. That's why, we focus on that so much. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason why there should be a lack of experience because of dollar, right? We can make something into something wonderful with a minimal amount. It doesn't have to be expensive. Yeah. You just need to think through it.
Yeah. No, the reason I bring that up is I've seen a lot of concepts where, when they really get into scale mode, there's a noticeable difference in design and on the inside of the space.
What you guys did that some others don't is that and there's a couple of brands that we work with that will think about context and culture and the environment that they're building within. And if you can approach it, you have your kit of parts, that's your brand. Mm-hmm. We understand that there's a function, there's operations that cannot be challenged. But what you did well is you allowed the kit of parts to be adjusted depending on the location that you were building within, right? And that's context, which is really important. Dallas is very different than Austin. And we treated it that's different from Houston. And I think those as soon as you make those subtle changes based on the people that you're going to serve, you're going to find success.
Sure.
And I do think that what you built was, and the spaces that you allowed to get designed and built, and the amount of energy that you put into the build did keep people coming back like that. I would imagine. I hear people talk all the time about, man, that's a great experience, and I'm going to go back. By the way, the tacos are great.
But that just goes to the kind of the interesting dynamic and tension between design and operations and all that, right? Because I know that early on with Torchy's, using them as an example, there's always been a focus on culture. There's always been a huge focus on food quality. And authenticity and all that. Yeah. And so then that was part of the design too. Cause early on, I can't speak for it today cause I can, cause I've seen a couple of the newer ones, but, we wouldn't compromise on the authentic nature of materials So, we would never do anything faux, right?
Yeah.
So if you wanted a pattern on the wall that was either done with a hard material, it wasn't wallpaper printed.
Yeah.
It was like, do it right.
Yep.
There was if you had a dining room wall, you'll see a lot of companies or concepts will run a material up to 10 feet and then the rest of it's painted. Well, if you had a 15-foot wall, 18-foot wall, we'd run the material from the floor all the way up because that needed to be its own element, right?
Yeah.
And again, so stay true to what you're doing, but that comes with a cost.
Yeah.
Sure. We were the only concept that I've ever seen to use like road reflectors as a finish. I mean, that's not cheap.
Yeah.
But it had an impact and it became a brand element. I heard, I don't know that they're not really doing that anymore, which I'm very disappointed in because that was really a staple and a brand element of that. But I just, and I could mention a few other concepts that I've seen that as they get into growth mode, you can tell the budgets are definitely reducing, which I know is part of the evolution. Yeah. But it is it's interesting, and I don't know if it doesn't affect the brand at some point, I don't know. I
think that the other side of it is having a strong brand.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
And we work with a local shop out. It's Bird's Barbershop. We did 3 or 4 several years ago, and then they went to another shop and worked with them, and now they're back. And it was a real interesting conversation because they even though they're a successful group, they're growing. What we were able to deliver as a collaborative group, owners, us, builder, all the way around, they felt it, wasn't, they just, they wanted, they liked what we brought. And I think I'm saying that because it's not a different experience. It's a rich brand. They know who they are. They know what they want to deliver to their clientele and the type of service, but it's graphic, right? And the budgets are not, but the experience is very similar, and it's very contextual, and it delivers this thing that people expect when they walk in, and the thing is different, and there's something to that, right? To recognize that whenever you're working with an architect or a designer or a builder, and it goes back to that brand, and it's like, you got to hold on to it. And if you lose it, you lose your soul.
Sure.
Right. And people are going to know it. And
yeah.
Well, and in scaling, when you go from, because, the first Torchy stuff were mostly retrofits, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When you get out of that retrofit business into, I need somewhat of a prototype, but you want to stay true to all of those brand elements that made it unique and funky and stuff like that. That is where you have to, that's where the people smarter than me need to come in the room and say, I think the other thing that maybe we didn't mention in scaling a brand, and going from maybe a to prototype is this time element, because now you're doing multiple builds a year, which involves, training teams and operating teams. And now you need different GCs on the jobs, and you're in different regions or whatnot. And so it's a lot more complex.
Absolutely.
In building, 8 in the next 6 months, and you've got to have all those moving parts. And so somewhere in the room, somebody says, how do we become more efficient?
Yeah.
Because every decision is costing you dollars, right? And so how do we stay true to the brand? How do we introduce the trade dress that we want in there? And how do we keep growing? And, the people that are funding that growth, I think want to return on that funding, and they're not as patient maybe as the designers or the builders or the operators.
Yeah. One time we were talking about that at Torchy's, and about how complex it was getting, and we started counting the number of people that would touch one project. And it was I think it was north of like 250 people. Wow. That would touch that one project. Then you consider that you're doing that multiple times.
Yeah.
And so you're talking thousands and people that are playing some little part in that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it gets infinitely more complex, and so that brings me to another question I was going to have for you. This whole concept of when you're scaling a business, of living in the clouds and being in the weeds at the same time, right? Because you've got to do both. Like, and I'd imagine being in operations again, you've got a board, you've got a private equity, you've got the goals from the highest level, and then you've got the values and priorities and all that down the front lines. Like, how do you stay or switch between the cloud and the dirt, right? Like being able to live in both those worlds and be effective and continue making an impact.
Well, I think you stay true to your formula for success, right? And so if you have I happen to have what I think is a formula for success, and you just prosecute it and prosecute it and prosecute it. It's about building a team, having the consistency in team. But one of the things nowadays, and one of my great interview questions is, how are you organized? It's as simple as that. How are you organized? And then you're just quiet and you listen to how somebody's organized. And 9 times out of 10, they'll respond with, "What do you mean, personally?" Or or so.
What do you want to hear when you ask that question from?
I want to hear how they're organized. I want to hear, are they, do they have a calendar? Do they have a to-do list? Are they digitally organized? Do they have a day timer? Are they a disciple of Stephen Covey? Are they are they a fly by the seat of their pants? Do they follow up? Do they do things like that? I want to know, how you're organized, because I'm asking you to lead people. So the answer to your initial question, how do you live between the clouds and executing the brand, is you're organized. Mm-hmm. You have to be organized. And by organized, I mean that you have to, I think it's important that you have a communication strategy. And I'm not talking about an external communications. I'm not talking about the communications director or the marketing director communicating. I'm talking about, what is your communication strategy so message sent is message delivered, and it gets to the frontline employee. How do you execute that? And there's ways to do that in this day and age, but I always had what I thought was a very simple to execute but organized communication strategy. And that was that, on a certain day of the week, you talked to the multi-units. You gave them the information in real time. Kind of this stuff that, you and I talked about in McChrystal's book, Team of Teams, right? Yeah. Actionable, real-time intelligence that, you're not waiting and it's not processed or edited. Here's real-time information this week. And then, you deliver it to your troops and they deliver it to their troops. But it would always be simple. What are the top 3 things on your business plan this week? What are your top 3 priorities? How can Joel help? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the simplicity of the communication. And then the other part of communication that I think is critical is it was documented. So I was blessed with a great executive assistant who, typed 1 million words a minute. And, 2 minutes after the call was done, here were the notes distributed to everybody on the call. Yeah. So what that did for this term we call accountability. My goodness, there's a record that said I committed to getting this done by then, or that we were going to do this. And what it does is it helps people to be organized. Mm-hmm. The only way to do that is to be organized, right? Mm-hmm. You still have to execute the mission. Yeah. So how do we do that? Yeah. Maybe that I hope that answers that.
No, it does. It does. I'm always curious in that with guys like you that have operated at a really high level. That how do you how do you stay in those worlds and become effective and be effective? So, the last thing I was going to ask you, again, I'm fascinated by this, is because I'm listening to the new, blowing the name of the author, but it's the new Elon Musk biography. Have you seen that?
By Isaacson?
Isaacson, yes. And, by all accounts, Elon Musk he's a very unreasonable person, right? And there's that quote, nothing, tremendous ever happened by reasonable men. And so I've noticed this in a few people that I've kind of encountered that have been ultra successful is this level of being unreasonable. How do you think about that? Because I would put you in that category of if you want to call it being a change agent or being somebody that's gone in and led big groups to do, big things. And then conversely, or at the same time, you've been around some pretty high, powerful CEOs who I would imagine are unreasonable. Is that a skill set? Is that a good quality to try to, have this idea of unreasonableness?
I don't know that I would classify it as unreasonableness. I think that leaders cannot be afraid of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about confrontation, I'm not talking about fisticuffs or a gunfight, right? I'm talking about the ability to be open, honest, and fair with the people that you lead. And if you shy away from confrontation, you're doing that person a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the organization a disservice. Maybe you're doing the board of directors a disservice if you're not open, honest, and fair and confronting issues, right? And there are, you'll find a lot of people that don't want to confront the issue.
Yeah.
And how does someone grow, if they don't know? And so, I think it's selfish if you're unorganized, and I think it's selfish if you don't become open, honest, and fair and confront issues. You have to, you have to do it that way. It's, share the truth with love.
Yeah.
It's kind of the attitude that I like to take.
But at the same time, I get that. But at the same time, you're trying to change people's worldviews in some sense to get them to achieve an objective that's maybe they don't think they can achieve.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this, if you a lot of things that we try to do aren't logical. They are. What we're trying to do is maybe not logical, but if you're trying to open 100 stores in 5 years, on paper, the way that you're trying to do that might not seem reasonable, right? So, but that's a goal that if you hit it has a lot of ramifications for a lot of different people. So you're trying to get people to believe that they can do something that's probably not maybe practical is the better term for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I get there's an element of having honest conversations, really, having a dynamic tension, but you're trying to get them to believe that they can do something that they might not believe that they can do. Right. So how do you do that?
Well, you're talking about how is it extraordinary? How do you get people to do common things uncommonly well, right?
Sure.
You've heard that before and stuff. And, one of the things maybe we didn't talk about here is, one of the elements for my formula for success is this concept of building the team, and I don't know, you and I think have talked about Belichick and, Belichick built a football team with lacrosse players. And part of it is building the team. And so, and we talked about culture and belief systems and things like that. I mean, you have to have the team that's capable of doing the extraordinary. So if you don't have that, I think you're hoping. I think you're just hoping you're going to be successful. But if you build the team, and we talked about elements of, how you do that, then I think it's just, setting expectations for the team to get it done. That's how you do it. Jocko's book, right? Extreme, help me with that.
Ownership.
Extreme ownership talks about that leadership is the single greatest factor in the success, right? It's about leadership. So, if you have a team of leaders, I think you can do the extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think I don't know how to do it with, with the mediocre or the commonplace. If you can attract winners, you're going to have a difficult time winning, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, he gives an interesting example that I've actually seen in person of, no bad teams, there's only bad leaders, where, that he talks about these boat crews during, Bud's training, where you might have these boat crews are doing these races, on and off the beach. And, you can have one team that's just constantly winning and one team that's constantly losing. And when you just swap the leaders, it changes automatically. Huh. And it talks about how that leader is really instilling a new belief system in that team of that they can do it. And there's a lot more to it, obviously, of true leadership, but that's interesting. It goes back to that, changing mindsets and changing beliefs, getting people to believe in themselves and believe in a greater mission. And trusting that person, I want to kind of coming back to trust again, that's unique. And that's what I was, again, we're really impressed with you on how you could build that in people. And I mean, it's, no matter who you talk to that's come across Joel Ross, I mean, they're going to tell you that they trust him first and foremost, and that's special.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think our our employees are looking for consistency, right? Yeah. They're also looking for discipline, structure, and order. Yeah. And that's what a leader provides, they don't want chaos and anarchy. Yeah. When they're making whatever they're making, $12, $15 an hour. I mean, they want consistency. And that's what leadership should be able to provide. And there's, how do you provide consistency? Well, I think you know what you believe, you lead with values, you have character, you know what the mission is, you execute the mission, you win the shift. That's all it's about. Let's just win this day. Yeah. Win the day, and and then let's go to win tomorrow. It's be here now type of attitude and attack it. And then you deliver consistency. And I tell you, the people that can deliver consistency for the people that they lead, their turnover goes way down, right? Yeah. Because if I know what's expected of me, and it's, there's no chaos, and all I have to do is what's expected of me. And if I know what's expected of me, guess what? I can learn that job, and I can do more than what's expected of me. Yeah. And that's the basis of how you, how you build winning organizations. That's an oversimplification. Sure. But I think that's how you start, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much more time we have, but I've got a question that we deal with all the time in terms of when you're trying to structure a team, whether it's 5 or 5,000, and you base it on culture and you base it on all the values that you feel are important, but you're also trying to teach and mentor. When do you know that when do you know to cut the cord? When do you know that I'm hanging on too much and it's just not cutting it and I need to let go, we need to part ways, I need to find another leader that's better at these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and there's no definitive answer.
I know.
But I think that the great leaders know.
Yeah.
They know when they know, and I think if you're open, honest, and fair, and not afraid of conflict, or confronting people with that, I think that if you feel, I think I've told you that I'm a Stephen Covey disciple, right? Mm-hmm. And he always used to teach, I remember this from the 80s, set the expectations, teach and coach, follow up, get to the moment of truth. I don't know if you guys remember that. That sticks with me. So, if you've set the expectation and you've taught the people how to deliver the expectation and you've followed up with the expectation, and you get to the moment of truth and you're not getting the results, maybe you go back to the top and say, did I set the expectations? And maybe you give it another chance. But when you go through that simple process and you're not getting the results, I think I think I think it's, that may be, sure. That's as simple as how I think of, I don't think I've ever in the last 15 years terminated anybody. The conversation has usually gone something like, Jeremy, the last time you and I talked, we said that if we got to this point, and Jeremy would say that you're letting me go. And so they would know that. And so people know where they stand. I think everybody wants to know where they stand.
Yeah. Yeah, I've found if you do, if you know, not that you're supposed to, but if you do it right, the people they're not surprised. They're never surprised.
Zero surprises. Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, well, yeah.
I had a conversation the other day, and someone said, Mark, you've developed a knack for letting people go in a way that is mutual. And I didn't think about it until now. And there was the term manipulating the conversation. I was like, well, I don't know if it's just that. It is setting up expectations, and that's pretty enlightening to hear you guys say that, because I thought, am I manipulating the conversation and so because I did it horrible a long time ago, and I felt terrible that I didn't set the expectations, and then had to have this conversation, and it ended up terrible. I felt bad in terms of how that was handled, and I've done a lot of work in terms of trying to do it correctly and knowing when that moment is, and not trying to hold on or let go, too long or too quickly. So, thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, Joel, is there anything else that you'd like to dive into? We're kind of
no. I mean, I appreciate the invitation. It's fun to good to see you again. Good to meet you and share. Love talking about people.
Yeah.
And building teams. It's it's what we should do, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm getting a little grayer, So So
what are you excited about right now, just in general?
Man, business wise, or I'm excited about. I don't know, a road game to Baylor this Saturday night.
Oh, nice!
Excited about that.
Good game.
I'm excited about. I'm excited about. I guess what I would call the youth of America, and where we have a lot of conversations that denigrate, the young folks and where we're going and stuff. I'm encouraged and hopeful that there's a lot of smart people. There's a lot of principled young folks, and I want to believe that our future is bright. And I think that the legacy that you and myself and Mark should lead should be, what are we doing to pour into the young folks to to make a difference versus shaking our heads, and that's everywhere wherever we encounter them. That's what I'm thinking about. I don't think that I don't like to use the word I'm happy, but I sure am joyful, So that's what I'm working on.
Beautiful. Well, Joel, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Cool.
appreciate it.